Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Kevin. Welcome to our daily devotion. Um, with all the happenings in America right now, with some of these hurricanes brewing, it's been very interesting to see some of the dialogue that's been happening, especially in Houston with Joel Osteen and his ministry getting a lot of flack for not housing some of the refugees and stuff like that. And it continues. I'm not exactly sure how this all happened. This has nothing to do with Joel Osteen. But one thing about it does demonstrate is that we are very fixated on big things, on public ministries. In America, we like things bigger and better, bigger stadiums, newer stadiums, big budget films. We have a motto in America, it's either go big or go home. Well, there's nothing wrong with public ministry. It's certainly just a necessary part of the church. But let me just say that God is very interested in private ministry, and God is extremely, even more interested in our private times that we have with Him. Doesn't matter how public our ministry might become, or even how private it may become. Maybe it's just a one-on-one with one individual, which is commanded in Scripture. We better be having regular private times with the Lord. And let me just say, along with that, is that there are times that He initiates private times, He Himself, even for very public individuals. One of those individuals that we see in Scripture is the prophet Elijah. Now, in 1 Kings chapter 17, the nation of Israel was in disarray. The kingdom that once was united under Saul, under David and Solomon, had now become divided. And Elijah had been raised up to be a public prophet to the northern tribes. And in the very first, essentially, act of his ministry, comes along the scene and encounters face-to-face the king of Israel, the northern tribes, Ahab, and tells him that he is prophesying that there will be no rain. And we know from the New Testament, from the book of James chapter 5, that drought actually lasted for 3.5 years and caused severe devastation in the land. Now, at that point, we might say, well, hey, Elijah has the ear of the king, and he's ready to start a very public ministry. Hey, why doesn't he start a big tent revival? Or maybe he should be planning a mega church. I'm saying this, of course, tongue-in-cheek. But it was interesting. The Lord sent him to leave King Ahab to go to east of the Jordan at a place called the Brook Cherith. And at that point, he was to wait there for further instructions. So he's drinking from this brook, and he's being fed by a raven. Very, very interesting. There's no real mention of any ministry happening at the Brook Cherith, except for the fact that God fed him. In fact, the very place that God sent him, it dried up. So then he takes this long, arduous adventure to the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. Now remember, he's in the east of Jordan. Okay, now he goes from west all the way to the coast of the Mediterranean Sea at Zarephath. And he doesn't get a public ministry there either. He's sent to a widow, okay, and this widow was the poorest of the poor. In fact, when Elijah encounters her, she's basically making her last meal and like, well, we're going to die. And Elijah's like, no, make me something to eat. She's like, you don't understand. I have nothing. I have nothing to give you. He says, well, go ahead. Why don't you go ahead and make me that cake, and I'll tell you what, God will supply everything that you need. She obeyed him incredibly. And there was no lack of food. That was the first miracle that Elijah saw. And later on, her son, her only son, he dies. And she is just distraught, understandably so. And he actually is used to bring this son back to life. Now, Elijah could have had a very public ministry, but God initiated these private times, and let me say something, very private ministry. And who we are in public should really demonstrate who we are in private. And we might be in a situation where we feel like things all around us are drying up, just like the brook Cherith dried up for Elijah. Just goes to show you that God has something else in place for us. John chapter 5, we're reminded that God is always at work around us. We need times of rest, make no mistake about it. But God doesn't. He's always at work. So if things are starting to dry around you and in my life, let's take comfort that God's in this. Well, it's interesting, in the following chapters, God sends Elijah back to confront Ahab. And as we know, that there was a tremendous battle where Elijah defeated the 450 prophets of Baal, and he had them slaughtered, a tremendous victory. But then Jezebel puts a hit on his life, and next thing you know, he's on the run. Next thing you know, he's at the point of suicidal thoughts, and it's like, Lord, just take me out of this world. I'm done. I don't need any more of this public ministry. The Lord sent three things. He sent the wind so strong that it literally cracked the mountain. He sent an earthquake, and then he sent fire. But it said the Lord was not in any of these things. That he was in a small voice. My prayer is that no matter whether we have a public ministry, whether we have a private ministry, is that we would learn to hear that small voice of God. That voice is much more loud and clear than an earthquake, than a violent wind, or even a tremendous forest fire. And my prayer for you today is that no matter what aspect of ministry God's given you, that you'd learn to hear that voice, that you'd learn to hear that direction. When things dry up and it's time to go, that you'd be able to move, and that I would be able to listen to his voice and move with that. And not despise whatever ministry we have. Maybe God's only going to send us to one individual. As long as we're faithful in that, God is pleased. So may I ask you just to continue to be faithful in the ministry that God has called you into today, and to hear his voice. God bless you.